please remember to leave a like, a comment, share the video about, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thank you. Well, isn't this just fantastic? Today we're going to talk about the casual and the academic. The reason why is because I saw a rather fascinating back and forth concerning a few rather well-known individuals. Some of these individuals have academic backgrounds. Some do not. Failure! Some just have inquisitive minds, possibly a level of critical thinking, an interpretation of information perhaps. But without the academic background, some will consider them to be conspiracy theorist nut jobs. I'm going to state a point now that is relevant to this entire video. If you are an academic and you cannot handle people questioning you to understand your point, to perhaps see if there's a gap in your logic, your argumentation, to make a point that perhaps this doesn't stack up to intellectual scrutiny, or to give you the chance to change their mind, you are a crap academic who uses appeal to authority fallacy as a means to skirt any level of accountability. And that is important. Granted, you don't have to tell anyone, the casual, the plebeian, the oikari, anything really. But on social media, when you make some grandiose statements, or you happen to share an article shitting on somebody with one of the largest podcasts in the world, and they decide to clart back, only for you to hide behind the essentially, I don't have to tell ya shit, bruh, you're going to get more than you bargained for. Everyone in every field should be questioned about everything, especially vaccines. That's important. Medicine isn't a simple case of, oh, this just works, let's go with that. Oh, everything was done properly, don't worry, just keep taking it. No. Everything has to be questioned, especially vaccines, because if there are discrepancies, or discrepancies are noticed and others refuse to acknowledge their existence, more dissent is going to be caused, questions raised. And if you have one of the largest platforms in the world, and they raise these questions, and you refuse to simply discuss it, to clear the air, you only make things more difficult for yourself and for academia. Recently I appear to have started a number of videos with a bit of a TED Talk. While I'm okay doing that, I don't want to bore you all to death. But as somebody that has worked within the field of academia, I feel it only right to make you understand, you the viewer, that I hold academics to a very high standard. And that standard comes with a level of intellectual rigor, scrutiny, questioning. Everything has to be questioned. Skepticism trademark. Okay? If it doesn't have that, then it is not academia. It is not research. It is not useful. So for this, we're going to insert a professor, Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, and some other idiots. Yes, it gets quite interesting. I think I've put this in the correct order though, so we'll go through it in order. Starting with an article. You're still a failure! An article from Vice, so highly credited news source, and not at all a massive. Spotify has stopped even sort of trying to stem Joe Rogan's vaccine misinformation, as a recent conversation between the podcast host and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. makes clear. A broad swath of the anti-vaccine universe celebrated Thursday, when Joe Rogan, the biggest podcaster in the country, hosted a 3-hour conversation with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the anti-vax luminary turned presidential candidate. The conversation was an orgy of unchecked vaccine misinformation, some conspiracy mongering about 5G technology and Wi-Fi, and of course, Rogan once again praising ivermectin, an ineffective faux COVID treatment. As RFK began his campaign by downplaying his anti-vaccine activism, the conversation represented a bit of a return to form, but the episode also conclusively demonstrates that Spotify, the platform that reportedly paid more than $200 million to host Rogan's show, has completely given up on addressing his relentless torrent of medical misinformation, except in the most pallid and surface-level ways. Part of me thought the reason why was perhaps because they have an agreement where they can't intervene on too much of what he uploads. But I do recall when he was moving his library from YouTube to Spotify completely, some of the episodes did not make the cut. I believe Sargon of Akkad's appearance were removed, I don't know about the Alex Jones ones, but I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't there as well. One does also wonder the level of input in the contract that he has with Spotify that Spotify themselves will have with the kind of content he produces. Basically, the show began with Rogan monologuing effusively about how he changed his mind on Kennedy, saying he'd gone from thinking the latter was a fringy thinking conspiracy type person to agreeing with Kennedy's stance on vaccines during the pandemic. Quote, I was like, is this possible that this is the guy that's telling the truth? What followed was a detailed survey of Kennedy's most dangerously incorrect views, a far too extensive list to outline in full, all of which Rogan accepted uncritically, his mouth quite often literally agape in awe. There's something disingenuous about this paragraph, not the part in brackets. It's the far too extensive list to outline in full. You're poisoning the well already, you may as well go through it all, because it's a bleeding article. It's not hard to type it all out if it's that important, but you're just asserting that. They included innumerable talking points that have already been debunked by some. At one point, for instance, Kennedy falsely suggested that vaccines cause autism, which has been repeatedly and roundly disproven, with Rogan interjecting supportively. Kennedy also trotted out one of his favorite talking points that vaccines contain a dangerous form of mercury. As ever, he conflated ethyl mercury, which is not considered hazardous to human health, with methyl mercury, which is considered dangerous in even small doses. Kennedy does acknowledge there are two different types, but insists there's no real difference between them, citing a lab test on brains of monkeys. I'd like to interject here just something. Mercury has three forms: elemental, inorganic, and organic mercury. Organic mercury is called methyl mercury. Ethyl mercury is formed when the body breaks down thimerosal. That is typically found in vaccines. Low-level ethyl mercury exposure is very different from long-term methyl mercury exposure. Ethyl mercury is broken down by the body differently and clears out of the blood. It is typically found in urine, for example, because of how the body breaks that chemical down differently to methyl mercury. You're all welcome for this science lesson. Consider it another TED Talk. I'm going to skip to the part that is most relevant to get us to the tweets that we need to then see. In response to public outcry from something earlier in the year, which led to Neil Young, Johnny Mitchell pulling music from the platform, Spotify published its internal platform rules. This includes strictures against content that promotes dangerous, false, or dangerous deceptive medical information that may cause offline harm or pose a direct threat to public health. It specifically prohibits saying COVID is a hoax, promoting bleach products as a cure for or treatment for the disease, and promoting or suggesting that vaccines approved by local health authorities are designed to cause unalive. In response to a request for a comment from Motherboard, Spotify offered the following statement. Spotify has a long-standing policy that helps us balance creator expression and listener preferences while minimizing the risk of offline harm, blah blah blah. The last rule, and this is from a brief phone call with Motherboard, they insisted that Rogan and Kennedy had not broken it. The two suggested during their conversation that COVID vaccines are ineffective and are injuring and killing large numbers of people, they did not explicitly say they were designed to do so. Semantics. I like that. The same spokesperson also said that Spotify could, on occasion, take episode-level action on a show, for example, limiting its discoverability, then added that the company does not discuss episode-level actions taken. While there is no evidence that this episode would be more difficult to find, it would be more difficult to bury a Joe Rogan episode. He's already at the top. How do you suppress someone who's there? There isn't much in the way of close competition for him. So the article's next line, there's no evidence that this particular episode has been made more difficult to find, is redundant. I'm going to link the article down below if you're interested in reading it, but I really want to get to the tweets. Started by Professor Peter Hotez, MD, PhD. Spotify has stopped even sort of trying to stem Joe Rogan's vaccine misinformation. It's really true. Anna Merlan, just awful. And from all the online attacks I'm receiving after this absurd podcast, it's clear many actually believe this nonsense. Peter Hotez is a pharma shill who also claims to have developed a free vaccine, number of them in fact, they're all completely free. Many have challenged this by pointing out that taxpayers will undoubtedly have had some input on the funding aspect of it, and whether it is free or not is debatable, as is everything for that matter. Joe Rogan saw this tweet and said the following: Peter, if you claim what RFK Jr. is saying is misinformation, I'm offering you $100,000 to the charity of your choice if you're willing to debate him on my show with no time limit. I firmly believe that debate is healthy, debate is good, civil discourse is great. If you have the right kind of host that can keep people from, let's say, losing control, being able to back their corner, then it is an opportunity. A good one, especially considering the size of the platform Joe Rogan offers and the six-figure sum being offered to a charity of Peter Hotez's choice. Peter Hotez replied, "Joe, you have my cell, my email, I'm always willing to speak with you." Okay. Joe Rogan retweeted this with, "This is a non-answer. I challenged you publicly because you publicly quote tweeted and agreed with that dogshit Vice article. If you're really serious about what you stand for, you now have a massive opportunity for a debate that will reach the largest audience a discussion like this has ever had. If you think someone else is better qualified, suggest that person. By the way, Peter Hotez, I saw this tweet that you deleted. Be serious, Joe. That's what you throw out of your hunting buddies on a weekend. A $50 million endowment. Not for me, but so we can continue making low-cost, patent-free vaccines for the world's poor." Preceded by RFK Jr.'s apology. I see we've set some standards and then summarily deleted it. Hence why there's a missing retweet in here. Okay. Tom Nichols retweeted Joe Rogan by saying, "No medical professional should ever agree to do this. Never. It elevates the conspiracy guy, demeans the medical professional, and will only convince the kooks out there that RFK is right because a real doctor took the time to debate him. Never debate a conspiracy theorist." The problem you have here is, if someone disagrees with you, you can just label them a conspiracy theorist and dismiss them. That's what you do. Again, poisoning the well. Not looking for the discussion, medical professionals are no different to any other academic. They're really not. They must be held to the same standards, and it doesn't matter what your background is, if you possess an iota of critical thought, you are entitled to a discussion with a medical professional. I know seeing a doctor these days is somewhat novel because they don't exist, but if we are to simply believe what a doctor says is as fact, then we lose our ability to question them. Reply: unless you are Mehdi Hassan or have read his book and really learned it well, then maybe. Reply: as much as Mehdi would demolish RFK, that would only raise RFK's stature among the faithful. They would take it as a sign of Kennedy's importance that Mehdi was sent to pants him. Conspiracy theories are closed circles, nothing disrupts them. Ask the Millerites. Joe Rogan retweeted Tom Nichols by saying, "That would be a great suggestion if you could assure that the industry you were representing wasn't completely captured by heartless monsters who have a history of some of the biggest criminal finds in human history because their deception has cost hundreds of thousands of people their lives. It would be a great suggestion if the industry you were defending didn't occasionally look at human beings as an opportunity to generate insane wealth regardless of the tragic consequences. But you can't do that. So maybe it would be a good idea to have a effing debate." Elon Musk replied to Joe Rogan by saying he's afraid of a public debate because he knows he's wrong. Peter Hotez retweeted that with, "Seriously, Elon? This is monstrous. 200,000 Americans needlessly perished, including 40,000 Texans, our neighbors, because they were victims of anti-vaccine disinformation during our awful COVID Delta BA1 waves in 2021 to 2022. Please don't do this." Elon replied, "First of all, I am generally pro-vaccine. I've been vaccinated against pretty much everything, as have my kids. Second, I think there is tremendous promise in synthetic mRNA. It is like medicine going from analog to digital. That said, the world obviously went crazy with excess vaccination against COVID-19. I had that in quotes because the RNA sequences changed so much that I called it the virus of Theseus. So many people I know had serious side effects from the vaccines, including myself. Failure to acknowledge that is a lie. As for the unalives you claim are due to COVID, why is the nation of Sweden still alive? Just go on Rogan and do the debate." Included is a meme, and underneath you have people providing their own citations, talking about children on the spectrum. Shots didn't put them on the spectrum, they got it from them, and other related information that Elon then speaks about, but I think that's another discussion. In Joe Rogan's earlier tweet, retweeting even Tom Nichols, the parody of Elon Musk said, "The debate will solve all this nonsense, make it easy. Reply Donnie Darko. Not that Pete will ever do it because he's just another high-profile farmer troll and has nothing to back it up. But thank you for putting your considerable weight into this." What gets amusing for them is they eventually realised they'd been replying to a parody account.
But you're all failures.
Elon Musk did also say maybe Peter Hotez just hates charity, to which Peter Hotez retweeted with, Elon, maybe you weren't aware, but in 2020 we asked you to support our lab that ultimately made low-cost, patent-free COVID vaccines. 100 million doses administered. Even though you couldn't help us then, we still need help for our low-cost XBB booster plus universal COV versions. We provided proof of concept it's possible to bypass Big Pharma to still do big things. So when Joe, RFK Jr. accused me of being a pharma shill when we don't take money from Big Pharma, it's insulting and unfair. But charity, as you put it, is welcomed, not for me but our vaccine center. The funny thing is, when all this popped off and was starting to clear, the dust that is, those that actually benefited were those that gave those vaccines out for free because their shares went through the roof, and people were paying attention because they were buying the shares, knowing they were going to make phenomenal sums of money off those shares. It wasn't as much of a brag when people realized that there were people genuinely making huge sums of money from some rather shady dealings. Elon Musk's tweet, "He's afraid of a public debate because he knows he's wrong," was retweeted by Mehdi Hassan, who said, "Noted conspiracy theorist who has zero background in medicine and public health, and said COVID would be gone by April 2020, thinks he knows more about vaccines than the world-renowned award-winning scientist who helped create patent-free COVID vaccines for the poor." Dax replies, "Why not debate him then and wipe the floor with him if you're in the right and have the facts supporting you?" Mehdi, because he wasn't paying attention to the rest of it, just had to spell check. Congratulations. My view, if a scientist is as great as people say, they would surely be open to a conversation. Hell, it doesn't have to be a debate then, does it? How about a conversation between two people who do not agree? No debate required. Give everyone a chance to say their piece to one another, and allow those, the viewer, to take in this information. I've supported debate for years. Always have, in fact. I think it's fundamental to understanding differing perspectives. But no one should be pressured into it, of course not. At the same time, if you are on a high horse, and that's how it looks, looking down on everyone else, using appeal to authority as your shield, and poisoning the well as an article to back you up, you don't look as good as you claim or others claim you are. You look pathetic.